Hello, everybody. This is Secular Sekai with Tridents Against Tyrants. I hope you're all able to hear me. If so, give me a plus in chat. Oh, hold on a sec. I might have a bug. Let me take a look. Let me refresh this page one sec. All right, there we go. Hey, Anton. I see Anton is here. KNK's GG, UTV and Ham, Anna, Mitch Ashdown, Ozzy Bugga. It wasn't me. Welcome everybody. All right, so hey, good to see you, Anton. We should definitely catch up sometime soon. Over a call. I have been. Well, you guys are used to this. I always say I'm busy because I always am, which I will admit. But I, just to summarize, I really cannot wait for uh, and for late November, early December to come around for elections in various different countries. Like there's the referendum vote in Moldova. There's the general elections happening in Republic of Georgia. There's the presidential elections in the United States. There's a few other countries too, I think, but those are probably the three big ones off the top of my head. There's just so much going on right now, and I want to see all of this done, and I want to see a move toward stronger support for Ukraine. That's that's what I'm hoping for. That's my New Year's resolution, to do everything in my power to push for stronger support for Ukraine heading into 2025, all the way through 2028 and beyond. All right. Anyway, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started because after the stream, I've got another event I got to run to. But good morning to everybody, or evening, or afternoon, or night, wherever you might be in the world. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the first piece of news. So, also my connection hopefully is strong enough, but if I have any lag, please let me know. Because my week had me running around a lot and I didn't have time to string my Ethernet cable where I needed it to. All right, so let's see how the stream goes right quick. All right, first piece of news. North Korean troops preparing to help Russia's war in Ukraine, a grave security threat, says South Korea. This is from the Kiev Independent. And I'm going to go ahead and put the link into the chat. Also, as a reminder, the PayPal donations email in the upper right for anyone who would like to show support to the soldiers of the 110th Mechanized Brigade or any other units, because occasionally the 110th in the past has asked for assistance to a few other units that they're acquainted with. But that's all part of the 110 drones that we're fundraising for them. If anyone would like to contribute to that, please feel free to do so. PayPal is open in the description and should pop up occasionally on the screen. All right, now then. North Korean troops being sent to Russia to assist its war in Ukraine are a grave security threat to the international community, South Korea's presidential office said on October 18th. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol convened an emergency meeting with key officials a day after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Pyongyang is preparing 10,000 soldiers of different branches and specializations to join Moscow's full-scale invasion. The participants shared the view that the current situation, where Russia and North Korea's closer ties have gone beyond the movement of military supplies to actual dispatch of troops, is a grave security threat not only to your country, but to the international community, South Korea's presidential office said in a statement after the meeting. Yep, that is a very accurate statement, I would say. Now, I'm sure everyone's been seeing this news everywhere because it's big. There's been there. I mean, everyone has known that was providing Shahed drones and some, you know, operators and manufacturing specialists to visit Russia to provide that kind of assistance early on and throughout the war. Everyone knows that North Korea had been assisting with providing munitions, artillery shells, but this is the first time. Guys, think about this. I want you to really, really think about this. Before Belarusians, before Belarus was drawn into this conflict, North Korea has been brought in on the Russian side. Think about that. Russia, Moscovia specifically, Moscow does not care about their own people. They don't really care about Cubans or North Koreans or other foreigners who they can either trick or who they can invite or who volunteer to come and assist them with the war. Uh, they'll take anyone they can from all around the world and put them into the meat grinder. All that they care about is not destabilizing the places and people they care about eventually absorbing and annexing and Russifying. Russia doesn't want to collapse of Belarus, so they don't want to commit too many Belarusian troops to the war front. Uh, Russia, I think, sees an opportunity here, obviously, to have an unconventional ally and provide combat experience to North Korean troops. And of course, North Korea sees that opportunity as well. Um, They also decided not to stand by and will respond by mobilizing all available means in cooperation with the international community, it added. Up until now, Seoul has only provided humanitarian aid to Kiev, though it has been reported the country has indirectly supplied artillery shells via the U.S. In June, South Korea said it would reconsider its policy of not directly supplying Ukraine with weapons after Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korea dictator Kim Jong Un signed a security agreement in Pyongyang. After the meeting on October 18th, South Korea's National Intelligence Service, or NIS, said it believes North Korea will deploy 4 brigades totaling 12,000 soldiers to the war in Ukraine, including 1,500 special forces. It would mark the first time North Korean forces had been deployed to a foreign war. It also revealed it had been working with Ukraine's intelligence services and had used facial recognition technology to identify North Korean officers operating in Ukraine's Donetsk Oblast, where it said they were helping Russian forces to launch North Korean missiles. So this is big. And if you're wondering, why is espionage? Why are intelligence services so important in times of peace and war? There's no way that you can gather that kind of information to be able to identify officers of the North Korean military, especially with how isolated North Korea is, without a robust and highly sophisticated and advanced intelligence network. So props to South Korea for openly admitting that they're working more closely with Ukraine on that, because that's kind of been known for a while that they've, on that front at least, been working with Ukraine. But now's the time to not be so covert. In certain instances, it's time for optics to match the reality of what your intelligence agencies and your military have been doing behind the scenes. Openly send weapons, openly assist Ukraine. Don't be punked by North Korea, is my thought on this. Um, Identified North Korean officers operating in Ukraine's Donetsk Oblast, where it said they were helping Russian forces to launch North Korean missiles. The direct military cooperation between Russia and North Korea that has been reported by foreign media has now been officially confirmed, NIS said in a statement. I think, oh, that's not the end of it. Speaking at a press conference in Brussels on October 17th, Zelensky said that Russia is planning to train and engage not only infantry but also North Korean specialists in various branches of the military. Yeah, those are just links to other articles. We know about 10,000 soldiers from North Korea they are preparing to send to fight against us, he added. His statement came days after a Western diplomat told the Kiev Independent that Pyongyang had sent 10,000 soldiers to Russia. Zelensky said that Moscow plans to actually involve North Korea in the war in the coming months. According to military intelligence, some North Korean officers are already in the occupied territories of Ukraine and joined the Russian army. Their number is unknown, Zelensky added. Zelensky said the participation of the North Korean military in Russia's war is the first step to a world war. Yeah, this is Russia and North Korea basically saying, yeah, we're going to bring more than just two countries officially into the fighting now. So this is definitely a big escalation. Um, with that being said, it has to be matched. It can't be. You can't allow these dictatorships to grow in knowledge, in tactics, in capabilities. Um, as much as people are concerned about a world war, which is scarier, the possibility of a world war or allowing dictatorships to grow and invade and become powerful to the point that people would live further under oppression? That South Koreans, Ukrainians, perhaps one day, you know, citizens of the Baltic nations or Poland or even further to the west in Europe, that citizens of these countries might see themselves under the boot of whatever style of authoritarian, totalitarian government in the case of North Korea it might be, whether it's a far left communist totalitarian or a far right fascist totalitarian government like what Putin has put together. I mean, at the end of the day, they're both threats. They both believe in violence and ruling with an iron fist. That's the common thread that brings these governments, these dictatorships together, everyone. And I really want to underscore that. Let's see. All right. Zelensky said elsewhere, the White House said on October 17th it can't confirm or corroborate whether North Korean troops had been dispatched to Russia in preparation of fighting in Ukraine. If true, that would demonstrate an increase in the cooperation between Russia and North Korea, U.S. Department of Defense Press Secretary General Patrick Ryder said at a press briefing. Moscow and Pyongyang have deepened military cooperation as Russia seeks arms and other support in its full scale war against Ukraine. North Korea has been supplying Russia with ballistic missiles and vast quantities of artillery shells. Yeah. Oh, I think and that's the end of the article. So, yeah, this is nothing new. It's all over the news. In various countries, this is being discussed. It is a big deal. Um, with that being said, it's not surprising. Russia has indicated that they're willing to do just about anything short of moves that they think will destabilize places that they want to remain stable, like Belarus, uh, or use of nuclear weapons, which they aren't going to do because they obviously are not insane. Russians are. Moscovia is smart enough to realize, Putin and his cronies, that they can get if the West stands by and doesn't respond, doesn't actually stop them, that they can get what they want without having to risk the nuclear button. And that's the sad part. We're seeing this war continue to go on for 2, 3. At this rate, it'll be 5 years. It'll be 8 years into this war, with the lines either frozen or more Ukrainian land slowly encroached upon by Russia. Ukraine needs reinforcements. Ukraine needs not just well wishes and a heap of weapons, but real support, ground support from allies. And maybe that's not a popular idea among some who are watching, but that's my belief. And I really hope that we see a drastic shift in policy in favor of Ukraine sometime soon. Anyway, let's take a look at Q&A and the chat real fast, and then we're going to move to the next article. Also, I am starving, haven't eaten yet, and didn't have time to share to various Discords channels and other social media. So if you get a chance, please be sure to share this on Facebook, Discord, uh, pretty much any others, Twitter, pretty much any other social media that you use, and I'd appreciate it. All right, let's see. Cheryl says I don't expect anything drastic until after the election. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's true. I'm not expecting anything drastic until after the election, which I think is part of the reason we've been seeing Russia really, really pushing out of fear that Trump will lose the election. Um, I definitely agree with that, unfortunately. But, you know, the election will be done in, yeah, I mean, the election will in less than a month. We're going to know the result. And after that, I really hope we see a new administration that is very pro-Ukraine. Um, let's see. Till after the election is the same on laptop. Oh, hold on. Oh, and I see people were just discussing a little bit about how YouTube works for replying to comments. um, by July of 2025, the new NATO brigade will be formed and in place in Lithuania, mostly German soldiers, 8,000 troops. Good, good. Yeah, the Baltics need it. The Baltics need more reinforcement because the only death knell to NATO, really, there are two things that could cause it. One would be a pro Kremlin shill, a pro Kremlin fool like Donald Trump becoming the leader and having changing things enough to have inordinate control over the US pulling out of NATO or other key member states pulling out of NATO in Europe, um, or NATO becoming so complacent and so fractured, so weakened, so bureaucratic from within that Russia would be able to invade a smaller part of NATO like Lithuania or Latvia or Estonia and out of fear not see a response, because that would be the exact opposite. That would be like the oh, what is it, uh the Collective Security Treaty Organization, the CSTO, the little uh playtime NATO that Russia has put together. It would be like that, like with Armenia pulling out because they didn't receive assistance and Russia abandoned them during the war with Azerbaijan. That's Russia's plan, to either one day weaken NATO from within to the point where they feel like they could get away with it and NATO members would sue for peace, even though it was NATO land attacked, like what's happening in Ukraine, or to somehow infiltrate major NATO economies, major NATO military powers, and eventually convince them, from within, make a push for leaving NATO. Like, that's how Cold Wars are won. That's how the Soviet Union collapsed. Infiltrate and destroy from within. You have to be smart to win modern wars. It's not about bombs, it's about ideas and it's about politics. Politics are war. Maybe people don't like to hear that, but it's true. Politics in Cold Wars are a huge part of how psychologically wars are fought. It's a sad reality, but it's the truth. That's my opinion, at least. All right. Anyway, I don't see any other questions. Let me double check. Let me unpin this. I'm gonna try to get an Ethernet cable strung because I'm getting messages about my stream rate. So I hope everything is pretty clear. And welcome everyone who came. I think Mr. Spock and Amonsky Amarsky, Keith Kane, several others. Just, yeah, thank you to everybody who has come and joined the stream. All right, let's move on to the next article. Actually, before I do that, though, really fast, I'm going to go ahead and share the stream on a few places. One. Two. And we'll just do a third one and jump right back into it. All right, there we go. All right, on to the next. So, next article I've got for you guys is from AP News. I'm putting it into the chat. Oh, I see. I am having vote independent on one slot, but he is Ukraine strong and running against Deb Fischer, who literally helped shut down Ukraine funding last year and continue to do so to this day. Oh, yeah. No, for any Americans out there, don't discount independent candidates. Some of them are pro-Ukraine. Some of them are, yeah, definitely do your homework on everyone. Because just because they have a D or an R or an I for independent next to their name, doesn't really say everything about that person. It's always best to do a deep dive on every candidate. All right. Now then, our next article is France vows support for Ukraine's plan to end Russian invasion. From Kiev, Ukraine, French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot pledged his support for Ukraine's plan for ending the 2.5-year war with Russia, telling reporters in Kiev on Saturday that he will work with Ukrainian officials to secure other nations' backing for the proposal. Let's see. Unveiled by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky earlier this week, Kiev's so-called victory plan, let's not say so-called, it is a victory plan, hopes to compel Russia to end its invasion of Ukraine through negotiations. Oh, I can see why they're saying so-called in that case. Yeah, and so, okay, the proposal is being considered by Ukraine's Western partners, whose help is vital for Kiev to resist its bigger neighbor. A key element would be a format invitation into NATO, which Western backers have been reluctant to consider until after the war ends. So I actually need to take a closer look at the actual meat of the of Zelensky's victory plan. Um, if it is to compel Russia to end its invasion of Ukraine through negotiations, rather than through military victory, which is an unfortunate topic that I think many have known would eventually potentially come to the table. Then the real question is, here's the big question, because you can have a war that ends without really ending a frozen conflict. And that's something none of us want, but that's unfortunately, from that paragraph, it seems like that might be the way things are going, which is, if any of you are familiar with the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, or the situation in Moldova with Transnistria, or in Republic of Georgia after the 2008 Russo-Georgian War with South Ossetia and Abkhazia, then you'll be familiar with the fact that it's very possible for a country to claim a territory, say that that internationally is theirs, have it be internationally recognized as theirs, but in practice and the way that it is de facto run and governed, uh, it is basically under the control of another country. Um, that's how it is with South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Uh, you know, they're claimed to be independent, but not really. It's more like a gateway into becoming oblasts or part of the Russian Republic one day, because that's the way that Russia works. They've got oblasts and they have quote unquote republics within the federation. So Russia's to crudely oversimplify, Russia basically has two approaches. Find a place and stir up trouble and unrest and find domestic, individuals within a certain country who they can recruit to work for them, work with them, who aren't happy and want to have a breakaway country of some sort. And then, even if it's not internationally recognized, use the Russian military to basically occupy and prop up a quote unquote independent government recognized only by Russia, maybe a handful of other Russian allies at the UN, and then just keep that as a buffer state. Keep that as an unrecognized buffer state that they don't intend to bring into their federation, their fake federation, their empire. It's really an empire. That's how it operates. And have it on the fringes, which has been the case for a long time. Many would argue with Belarus, and that's kind of the same playbook used with other places like South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Or the second is to prime, if it's attractive to them resource wise or geopolitically, military wise, if it's a strategic location like Crimea, um, just push it forward as, you know, phase one, pretend that we're making trying to set up an independent republic or something, and then phase two, quickly bring that republic into the giant list of quote unquote republics inside of the Federation and make it a part of, force it, steal it, make it a part of our country. So that's the Russian way. Sometimes it's slow and you become a buffer state for decades. Sometimes it's fast and they try to rush you in with or without international recognition as part of the Federation. It's really horrible. I mean, it's crude, it's archaic, it's barbaric. It doesn't take a lot of intelligence to see how they set that up. Because it's something that humans have seen and done for literally thousands of years. Anyway, I went off on a little bit of a rant, but yeah, I can see why there'd be controversy there, because the real question is, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, if it becomes a frozen conflict, how much support will Ukraine be able to muster and maintain? And will that frozen conflict create a situation where Ukraine is, denied entry to NATO, which it really needs to deter another invasion in the future? It's just it's a rock and a hard place situation. It's horrible. Not meaning to sound super pessimistic. That's just my thoughts on that topic. Because yeah, it's not a good situation. We have to be honest about that. The proposal is being considered by Ukraine's Western partners, whose help is vital for Kiev to resist its bigger neighbor. A key element would be a formal invitation into NATO. This is it. Yeah, which Western backers have been reluctant to consider until after the war ends. And that's the kicker. If this becomes a frozen conflict and a formal invitation into NATO is a key part of negotiations with Western partners. The real question is, how does NATO set this up? I mean, it can totally be done. It absolutely can be done. Just look at Greece and Turkey. Look at North Macedonia and Bulgaria. Look at all of the NATO countries, officially part of NATO, who have governments that hate each other's guts and would be at war with one another if it weren't for the fact that, once you're in NATO, if you go to war with another NATO member, you don't get the support of NATO. The aggressor doesn't get the support. The defending country, the country being attacked, invaded, that's the country that gets NATO support. So, if Turkey invaded Greece, Greece would be theoretically would be getting NATO support. If for some reason Greece invaded Turkey, then, you know, Turkey theoretically would be getting NATO support. Although, yeah, theoretically, once more, that's the key word there, because everything looks good on paper until it actually goes into practice. If situations like those can exist and NATO hasn't fallen apart as a defensive alliance, then a special situation for Ukraine can 100% be crafted. There just has to be the political will. A Russian victory would be a consecration for the law of the strongest and would push the international order toward chaos, Barrett said at a joint press conference with his Ukrainian counterpart, Andriy Sybiha. That is why our exchanges should allow us to make progress on President Zelensky's victory plan and rally the greatest number possible of countries around it. Since the 2022 invasion, France has been one of Ukraine's staunchest military, diplomatic, and economic supporters in Europe. It is currently training and equipping what it will become a full new brigade of Ukrainian soldiers for frontline deployment. Thank you very much, France. French President Emmanuel Macron has also previously pushed for a policy shift from Ukraine's Western allies that could change the complexion. I think that should be complexity, but okay, of the war, allowing Kiev to strike military bases inside Russia with sophisticated long-range weapons provided by Western partners, which includes missiles from France. Okay, that's great. Long-range strikes are a key part of Zelensky's five-point plan, but have been met with reluctance by Kiev's allies so far. Barrett also announced that France would deliver the first batch of Mirage 2000 combat jets to Ukraine in the first 3 months of 2025, with Ukrainian pilots and mechanics also trained to fly and maintain them. By resisting against the invader with exceptional courage, you are not only fighting for Ukraine's territorial integrity, but you are also holding a front line that separates Europe from Vladimir Putin's Russia, that separates freedom from oppression, the French minister said in Kiev. And this is a new. I guess this is also part of the article, or an additional add-on. Russia and Ukraine exchanged POWs. Barrett's visit coincided with a prisoner swap between Russia and Ukraine late Friday night that included 190 POWs traded by the two sides under a deal negotiated by the United Arab Emirates. I actually didn't know that it was the UAE that was involved with negotiations for that. That's interesting. Among the 95 Ukrainians were 34 Azov fighters who defended Mariupol and the Azovstal Steelworks, the fortress-like plant in the now-occupied city of Mariupol, where their last-ditch stand became a symbol of resistance against Moscow's invasion. 95 of our people are home again. These are the warriors who defended Mariupol and Azovstal, as well as the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kharkiv, Kiev, Chernihiv, and Kherson regions, Zelensky wrote in a post on X. The head of the Azov Brigade, Denis Prokopenko, said on Facebook that 34 Azov fighters had been returned, but that another 900 remained in Russian captivity. Well-known Ukrainian human rights activist and service member Maxim Bukevich was also among the 95 exchanged. His release was announced by the ZMINA Human Rights Center, the organization that he co-founded. The swap follows the repatriation of 501 dead soldiers to Ukraine Friday in what appeared to be the biggest repatriation of war dead since Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022. we'll finish up the article. Most of the soldiers were killed in action in the eastern Donetsk region of Ukraine, mostly around the city of Avdiivka that Russian forces captured in February after a long and grueling battle. Ukraine's coordination headquarters for the treatment of prisoners of war said in a statement. Russia also received the bodies of 89 of its soldiers, Russian lawmaker Shamsail Saraliev told reporters. Elsewhere, the Russian Ministry of Defense said that it shot down 16 Ukrainian drones over Russia's Bryansk, Rostov, and Belgorod regions in the early hours of Saturday morning. Local social media channels shared images that appeared to show a blaze at a factory in the Bryansk region specializing in microelectronics. Russian authorities did not confirm the strike. So, a lot of information here. I'm glad to see more Ukrainian POWs returned back to Ukraine. I'm glad to hear France is helping to train another full brigade of Ukrainian soldiers. It's all so important. It all is. And of course, you've got so many countries that are trying to think for the international community how to avoid something becoming a nuclear war, because that's always a possibility in the modern world for anything to spark, escalate to a point where it becomes a nuclear war. But at the end of the day, can we really allow North Korea to be directly involved? Can we allow that propaganda victory? That propaganda victory of saying no other country in the world was willing to get on the ground and have troops committed to fighting in this conflict other than North Korea directly sending from their government, their military soldiers to fight with Russia. Um, you know, information warfare is a big part of how wars play out. Information, propaganda, uh, you know, the free sharing of news, real news that isn't propaganda, whether it's censored or not, um, symbolism, optics, and the reality of the influence all of those things have on the political processes of multiple different nation states and their alliances. Um, Showing weakness is not a good idea. There has to be some, maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be troops on the ground, especially, on the ground, but some big change has to come as a response to this. If not, then, well, then the West is being complacent and sleepwalking into a larger conflict when the war in Ukraine uh, eventually comes to a close. That is those are my thoughts on the topic. Um, all right. So what are we going to do next? Next, we're going to go ahead and take a break from news articles. Oh, actually, hold on. I need to check something. Oh, here we go. Actually, you know what? We have a bit more news that we're going to cover. Let me get it queued up real fast. And then we'll take a look at the map. And then we might close out looking at a few other things happening around the world because our primary focus is Ukraine, but of course, being, uh, focused on opposition to tyrants around the world, Tridents Against Tyrants does cover news from multiple countries. Oh, and I just saw that we seem to have had a donation. Thank you very much. We are now at, let me move this to a bigger screen, 16,218.47 hryvnia of our remaining goal. So thank you very much. I think that was an increase of about 5,000 hryvnia, whoever donated that. Much appreciated. I wish that I could have the pop-ups on the screen. I make sure that PayPal donations go directly to Ukraine, to Anton, so he's able to get supplies to soldiers. And unfortunately, PayPal doesn't want to be nice and allow pop-ups to to work properly for Ukrainian accounts, or at least last time I checked, they weren't allowing it. Actually, you know what? All right, let's do some more news, and then how long are we gonna do this stream for? You know what? I've got time. If I end up going over an hour a bit, then the other thing I've got to do today will just have to wait, because this is really important. Let's see. We already talked a bit about the POW exchange, North Korean troops. Ah, here we go. Here's something. Yes, and this I 100% agree with, because I want to know what their response is going to be as well. It doesn't matter if there's less than a month left for this administration before the election. Let me share this and we'll cover this news right quick. Also, before I forget, I'm going to make my contribution as a big thank you to whoever it was that just donated via PayPal. Thank you very much. And I'm going to donate. I will do $50 today. And to everybody else, 5, 10, 50, 100, whatever you can give is appreciated. No amount is too small. Sometimes I've given, depending on where I'm at financially, $10. Sometimes I've given 50 or 100 or more than 100. So let me do that real fast. All right. 4 drums for the 110th. Slava Ukraini. And come on, load. Send. All right, I've sent that to Anton. All right. Now then. Yeah, let's move on to this article and then we'll either jump into maps or I might have a few things I can show you guys on stream, some updates from Anton. Let's do another article. Ukraine has free healthcare, same time as spending 36.6% on defense. For context, pretty good healthcare. Soldiers' wages being higher or lower affects defense spending number. Two of the POWs. Okay, let's go on to the next article. OBS. And boom. Okay, this one is from pravda.com.ua. Congress demands Biden's response to North Korean troops' participation in war against Ukraine. Mike Turner, chair of the House Intelligence Committee in the United States, has demanded an immediate briefing from the White House amid reports that North Korean troops may be involved in hostilities against Ukraine on the side of Russia. Source is a letter from the congressman to U.S. President Joe Biden, reports European Pravda. Details Mike Turner says that North Korean troops' involvement in the war against Ukraine must be a red line. I agree. And there has to be a response of some sort against that red line. Because it's Ukraine today, but who knows what it'll be tomorrow? What is the West going to is the West going to sit on its hands if North Korea decides to attack South Korea or if China decides to attack Taiwan? This is sending a very negative message that breaks, it can harm, if not completely break trust in military alliances and whether or not nations should expect to be protected by their allies. Small drink right there, because I have not eaten yet. In the letter, he notes that the information on North Korean troops in Ukraine is alarming and indicates an extreme escalation of the conflict in Ukraine. North Korean troops either. Oh, and a big thank you to Annette, who often, uh, very often, helps with news briefs and information. Thank you very much. Shout out to Annette for all that she does on the shills, and also, over here on Tridents, we cover news sometimes that she provides, which is extremely useful. North Korean troops either attacking Ukraine from Russian territory or entering into Ukrainian territory must be a red line for the United States and NATO. Your administration must make that absolutely clear and unequivocal, Turner wrote to Biden. Mike Turner also called for an immediate classified briefing at the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence on the possible involvement of North Korean troops in the war in Ukraine. Earlier, Kirilo Budanov, Ukrainian Defense Intelligence Chief, said that about 11,000 North Korean infantry troops could be deployed in the war in November. South Korea's intelligence service has also announced the deployment of North Korean troops to Russia. Estonian Defense Intelligence believes that the participation of North Korean soldiers in the war on the side of Russia will not change the situation on the front line. It won't. It won't. Guys, I want to heavily emphasize this. 10,000 soldiers is nothing in the grand scheme of things. Sounds like a lot for those of us who don't have armies at our command, especially for a war of this scale. Sounds like a lot, but it's very little. But it still is. I mean, several of those soldiers will probably go to the front lines. Several will die. Several others will be allowed to be embedded with other Russian units, and given opportunity to survive and go back to North Korea with their experience, their expertise that they receive. There are special forces, 1,500 special forces who are supposed to be involved. It's not about changing the tide of the battle. It's about readying North Korea for war. The whole point of this is to give North Korea the opportunity to have once in a lifetime experience in a war of a scale that hasn't been seen by many countries for decades, for half a century now, more than half a century. um, and so when you hear about the International Legion, when you hear about soldiers who serve in Ukraine from various countries, um, remember that those who survive, who really see heavy fighting and survive and go back to their countries, hopefully with, you know, hopefully without physical or psychological trauma that prevents them from being effective assets, uh, militarily speaking, in the future for their various nation states. Um, yeah, that's what North Korea is after. I mean, I'm not saying that's what the International Legion is all about, but what I'm saying is when the war is over, those from other countries who serve in the Legion, their expertise will be useful if they're willing to share it to their various countries, to their governments. That's just kind of a side effect of people from around the world getting involved in the war in Ukraine. That's what North Korea is after, but on a larger scale. They want out of the 10,000 or more, if they send more soldiers later on, if they end up uh, with 10,000, with even just 5,000, but just a few thousand general infantry troops and special forces troops with real firsthand experience, that's not good for South Korea. That's not good for the West. That's not good for um, the future of peace on the Korean Peninsula. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that if the participation of North Korean troops on the side of Russia in the war against Ukraine is confirmed, it will show the Kremlin's level of desperation. Yeah, that's an understatement. Russia is desperate, but here's the thing. Russia is used to being desperate. Russia is used to being innovative and creative when they get desperate. Saying that Russia is desperate doesn't really change anything. Okay? Russia has been desperate because things haven't been going the way that they want. But the problem is that Russia will find every single other dirty trick in the book to get what they want without while avoiding destabilizing their society in the ways that would actually threaten their regime um, or their military logistics. And that's the problem. See, that's the problem. Like Moscovia is not stupid. I wish that they were. I wish that. I mean, to be fair, many members of the Russian military have shown that they have shown their incompetence during this conflict. But the entirety of Moscovia and their military is not incompetent, and that's the problem. There's enough shrewdness to worm their way into getting what they want, even when things are stacked against them. And I don't want to see that. I want to see Ukraine come out of this intact, whole, without any acquiescence to the desires and machinations of this fascist federation from the Far East. It's yeah, it's just Russia being Russia. Anyway, that's the end of this article. Let's go ahead and I'm going to take a look and see if I've got some of those updates. Let me see if there are any questions real fast. Oh, you got to remember, Ozzy and the money Putin will be paying him for the services of his meat. North Koreans work OS, but they get a pittance of what is paid. They have been working Siberian lumber concessions for ages, or I think that's misspelled. But yeah, no, it North Korea nominally is communist, but really, at the end of the day, even at the end of the day, it's really just more of a totalitarian kind of weird leader worship society that pretends to be communist. Um, it's weird. It's weird. North Korea is the textbook definition of communism, gone to the extreme of controlling every aspect of of a citizen's life and being a prisoner in one's country. Um, so yeah, for many North Koreans, especially since money literally has been outlawed in their country at various points in history, barter is a big part of North Korean culture. It's like, yeah, we don't care about getting paid in rubles. Just give us some lumber, give us some resources, give us some food, give us, and that could be to the country or that could be to individual members of the North Korean military. Imagine that, not being paid in money, but being paid just in food for your family or an apartment in Moscow or in Pyongyang. Just here you go. This is your payment. This thing. Um. So yeah. Um. And right. Let's see. Jake or if you receive pay at all. There's plenty of people who also just don't get paid because they're expected to work as slave labor, basically. Yeah, 11,000 troops is about 10 days of Russian losses. Yeah, if the Russians are smart, they won't just be throwing them out there haphazardly. The whole point is for them to be learning as students, basically, like the greenhorns. So the whole point would be to embed them in situations where there's a possibility of death, but they're not as likely to all be completely wiped out. Um, gradually give soldiers experience. Uh, Now, whether or not the Russians will be competent enough, smart enough to actually do that, or care at all about these North Korean soldiers, I have no idea. Maybe they'll just be fed directly into the meat grinder. Um, I actually don't know the answer to that. I guess only time will tell. All right. Okay, now then, let me check on this. Oh, also an update. I'm planning to do it today in a few hours. I'm putting forward the application for monetizing this channel. That way, those of you who maybe sometimes have trouble donating over PayPal or prefer to have another way to donate would have would have just YouTube super chats and stuff like that available. I've been I really want something else. Like Buy Me a Coffee was great until all of the drama happened with whether or not they're actually going to continue paying out to Ukrainian accounts. Um, but yeah, Buy Me a Coffee was fantastic because of, for a long time, because of how they were willing to operate compared to other companies. But, you know, even if I end up having to like cover the transfer costs and have some of that come out of my pocket. I still want that to be available for you guys to be able to donate because the original plan was going to be for super chats to support the channel, but I'm thinking for now until we find a better alternative, I want everything, the maximum amount of donations to go towards supporting Ukrainian soldiers. So, uh, yeah, if I do get monetized, um, for the time being until there's a replacement of some sort for Buy Me a Coffee that works well, like the system we had before. I'll probably just set up YouTube donations to where they're being transferred to the monobank jar, or somehow cover the fees and get all of that directly to soldiers. Let's see. Okay, Anton has posted those updates, and I see we're at nine. What? How much is that? We're at 18,279.47 hryvnia. Let me see here. Images. Let me check something real fast. Uh, edit. Go to. There it is. Go to the monobank jar. Where are we at? Currently 27. 27 of 110 FPV drones financed. So that's good. Okay, perfect. Well then, yeah, you know what? I need to make a separate post later on, but for now, what's going to be the best way to share this? Hold on a sec. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got the last couple of drones that were sent. I've got a video for that, so let me show you. This is from earlier this month. So let me get that ready and I'll show it to y'all. What's going to be the best way to do this? Twenty drones. All right, we'll start with this. We'll start with a few things that were specific to from earlier this month that weren't that like 20 drones that are from work that Anton has been doing separately in support of soldiers. And then I'll show you the latest video, some stuff that should be tied to what we've been helping to finance. Let me get that up right now on the screen. OBS. Let's see. Oh, I don't need a display capture, just a window. Yeah, that'll work. Maybe. Let's see. Why is it not appearing? Oh, maybe because I have it closed. There we go. Okay, so here's Anton. And this is 20 drones, which is more than we have currently financed because, but these are similar to the models that we've helped to send with our fundraiser in the past. And yeah, just wanted to show you some of the good work he's been doing. He's continuing to work, very tirelessly as a volunteer there in Ukraine, helping to deliver supplies to soldiers. So, in addition to everything we've been doing, he's been helping out with getting supplies to multiple different groups, multiple different units. So, very much appreciate Anton and everything he does. Really glad he's able to be here with us today for the stream. A lot of respect for you, man. Next, let me close that. Let me see if the audio for this is going to work. Let me try to pull up a video. See if this will work. Kind of. Audio might be a little bit low, and there's not subtitles on this one, but here are some drones that were recently sent and other supplies. So, yeah, thank you everybody who's helped us to be able to get drones delivered to the 110th Mechanized Brigade and other soldiers in Ukraine.
Військовослужбовці батальйону безпілотних систем 110-ї ОМБР імені Марка Безручка. Щиро дякуємо Антону Ткаченка та всім, хто долучився до волонтерської допомоги в вигляді FPV-дронів, якими наші хлопці вже завтра будуть нищити техніку окупанта на Покровському напрямку.
All right. Hope that was audible to everybody. Because wanted to show you guys an update just so you have an idea of how things are going. We're still continuing to get drones delivered at our pace. I know there are some channels, some groups that are like getting huge amounts of money, which is beyond what this channel at its current size is able to do. But we're doing what we can, given what we can to assist the war effort, and always appreciate to see, pictures and videos of what's been fundraised and its delivery to soldiers. So thank you very much to everybody. All right, let's see here. Next, we're already over an hour in. Oh, I see a question from It Wasn't Me. Let me pin it in the chat or select it. Why is everyone so convinced that North Korea won't send the next 10,000 soldiers to Russia once the current ones are trained and sent to the war? Won't send the next 10K to Russia once the current ones are trained and sent to the war. So you mean like send them to Russia to fight in Kursk? I mean, yeah, no, that's a very real possibility. Like, no, I mean that is a very real possibility. They could end up just using. I think you bring up a very good point. Russia doesn't want to destabilize its own society and get its population riled up and really see dissent or even rebellion and revolution even within the boundaries of the Russian Federation, Moscovia. So the fact that they're bringing North Korea in to kind of train them, get a few people ready, kind of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, kind of a situation between the two countries. It very much could be, hey, we saw what happened in Kursk, so we know that what Ukraine is willing to do now, with or without permission from Western allies, from the EU or from Washington D.C., from Brussels or D.C. Uh, we aren't able to get enough soldiers just from random conscripts from various other countries like Cuba or some countries in Africa or the Middle East. And, it's very bad uh, information wise if more and more uh, poorly trained Russian civilians are conscripted or put together their own militia groups and then get wiped out by professional soldiers from the Ukrainian side. So North Korea, do you want to have quick, rapid deployment forces ready or station, with our permission, our oversight, maybe have some in Belgorod or in Kursk or maybe even in Belarus? I mean, there's no talk of that, but it's a possibility. It's like, how can we cover our bases without pulling from the parts of the Russian population that will actually cause problems if we pull that string too tight? This is just another way of trying to do that with larger numbers of bodies, larger numbers of soldiers that are non-conventional. Um, it's yeah, it's sickening, especially given the reputation and the knowledge of how many North Korean soldiers have operated in the past and continue to operate to this day in terms of brutality toward unarmed citizens. Yeah. Anyway, well, but of course they feel right at home among the Russian military for those reasons. Um, all right. Next, let's go ahead. So we've done some articles. We've gone into, showed you some uh, video updates. Anyway, I don't think I actually answered that question, but to answer it, it's very possible. It's very possible. Um, they might send their next 10,000 into Russia to cover parts of the border, but the Russian border is so huge. 10,000 troops, even more than that, from North Korea to help cover, the Russian countryside. It's like it's not. You can't cover all of it. You can't cover Crimea. You can't cover everything from oh man, if I were to look at it, all of the part of Russia that borders northern and eastern Ukraine, you can't cover possibilities of things happening in the occupied parts of Republic of Georgia. Um, there's always going to be something that Ukraine is able to tactically and strategically utilize that's unexpected. But the real question is whether or not doing something unexpected will have a long-term benefit for Ukraine on the battlefield. And the I've said before, I'll say it again. The real answer to this is unless France, unless Germany, unless the United States, unless the Baltics, maybe the Baltics could be the start. Hopefully they don't. Hopefully it's not just talk, but even if it's a small country, the moment another country is willing to commit armed combat troops to the Ukrainian side officially, not just through the International Legion and other unofficial groups accepting individuals. When that happens, then things can start to potentially turn around a bit because Ukraine needs soldiers, Ukraine needs bodies on the ground to help resist against this, that, as well as technology, as well as weapons. It needs both. We can't just pretend that one or the other is enough because it's not. If you don't have both, then it's a fight toward a frozen conflict and not toward a proper Ukrainian uh, liberation of the occupied territories. All right. Anyway, I think I've beaten a dead horse long enough on that. Let me go ahead and I guess we'll take a look at the deep state map real fast. let's see. All right, how do I want to pull this up right quick? Let's see. I've got one, two. Let's open up another window. Let's open up the deep state map. No way. Oh, have that. Interesting. I'm glad I opened up the deep state map today because pop-ups for our website. Sorry, I'm just checking something right quick before I share the map. Oh no. Okay, sorry. I thought they were using something new other than Buy Me a Coffee, but I guess Deep State is still using Buy Me a Coffee, which is actually a good sign, I'd say, because just like how there are Ukrainian projects and channels that use Patreon still, that tells me that there are still Ukrainians who are making it work with Buy Me a Coffee. I just don't know if it's going directly to Ukrainian, a Ukrainian account or like a Polish or American or British account, and then they have to do extra transfers or something like that. Anyway, all right, let's move on. How do I want to set this up? Let's do full screen. Yeah, that'll work. And it's a window rather than display. Okay, good. And voila. I guess it does cut off a part of it though, with the way I have this set up. Hold on. Okay. Oh, that's not correct either. All right, hold on. Okay, it's not perfect, but we're going to call that good because it's visible, even if it's not perfectly fit to the screen. Sorry for some of it being clipped a little bit at the top, as you can see. But we're able to see the map, so. All right. Now, let's go back 1 week. Across the southeastern fronts, when doing so, we can see there's been a repositioning of some enemy troops. There's been slight push, slight incremental gain over here near the Kurakove direction. Attempts to kind of push and retake liberated land here that was in green and create kind of a cauldron or a fishbowl situation over here near Kurakove. We can see, let's go back 2 weeks. Yeah, it's been little by little, but pushing a little bit of pushback up here near Krasny Yar, so that's good. It's been there, so enemy troops have been repelled a little bit up north, but down here, Hirnik, Kurakivka, Ilinka, eventually the larger town of Kurakove. There's an attempt to fully surround all of this, and it looks like the enemy troops are actually follow. Wow, they've got a little strip right here that I wouldn't want to be a Russian soldier right here if Ukrainian. Oh, but then they've got fire support from up north, so they're willing to go deep and kind of push like that due to the fact that they've got additional fire support not just from the east but from the north. What else? Let's see, over here in this direction. Yeah, and you see, this is why I emphasize it, guys. We can't be afraid of escalation. If someone's afraid of escalation, don't literally do this. Metaphorically, wake them up. Slap, slap, wake up. Because just like the Cold War, which I don't know if you guys realize how many hot wars there were during the so-called Cold War. Um, like during the what is known as the Cold War, I'm pretty sure. Shoot, the Soviet Union in occupying Hungary happened. I'm pretty sure. Wasn't I believe there was also an occupation at one point in Czechoslovakia back when that was still a country before the Velvet Revolution. That happened during the Cold War. Various conflicts happened during the Cold War that involved fighting and occupation. Um, so yeah, there were plenty of escalations back then. There were times when the West did nothing, and eventually other situations came to pass that led to the deoccupation of those areas. Uh, that were more political rather than military in their nature. Um, but these events happened. These quote unquote interventions, invasions, occupations, um, and Russia. Russia can't keep this up forever, but they're doing all that they can to make sure they can go as long as possible. Uh, and sometimes, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Best way to deal with a bully is to give them a bloody nose. More than a bloody nose. Make it very clear that they can't get away with doing what they want to do. Chassis Viatic continues to hold. I brought this up how a while back, like I want to say 2 months ago or longer. A while back, there was talk of Chassis Viatic being, imminently being ready to fall. That has not happened. There continues to be incremental gains and incremental losses. The enemy tries to push forward and then they get pushed back. So Chassis Viata for now is okay, but let's see. There's been more incremental pushes toward from here, the Andrivka direction. Um, in the end, the Russians are still looking to get to Pokrovsk. Kurakove might help them a little bit, but this road here does not connect for a long, long distance, as you can see. And this looks like it's mostly small roads and open fields and some rivers and stuff. Overall, it's still a very fluid but kind of, unfortunately, kind of frozen situation on the map. Let's look at the Luhansk direction. This I'm very interested in because Luhansk, for a long time, hadn't had much happening. I don't feel like it gets talked about enough. But look, let's go back months now. Let's go back to like May. It hasn't changed too drastically, but for a long, long time. I mean, a long, long time. There's kind of been this little foothold from the enemy side outside of you can see the borders here kind of. The enemy has had a foothold a little bit in this region to the west of the Luhansk Oblast, the large green liberated section up here near Kupiansk. And then it's kind of been, you know, just all up and down the front. Not changing too much, incremental gains here and there, and a little bit of pushback. But it stayed the same for months and months and months for a long time. There hasn't been a lot of focus that I've noticed, other than Kupiansk itself, on what's happening over here in the northeastern front, the Luhansk direction. And now we're starting to see more and more they're pushing quietly toward surrounding Kupiansk, creating a cauldron effect up here. And if Kupiansk falls, then I think we could probably expect them to then push further down south toward Borova, Liman, really try to get I mean, basically a buffer. Expand to this up here and go down south a little bit more, and try to make it so they've got a buffer for Lysychansk and, of course, for the whole of yeah, the where is it? Where is it? Uh, the enemy wants to keep pushing, but also, if this becomes a frozen conflict, solidify control over historically recognized boundaries for different regions, oblasts, areas in Ukraine that they're trying to steal. Luhansk, Donetsk, the whole of the Donbass combined together. Um, and then the same thing with the south, from Mariupol all the way down here to Kherson. Um, if they can't take everything, then the enemy's goal will be to solidify control over boundaries that they can make arguments for keeping after stealing. Uh, Try to make it quote unquote easier for people to accept. It's, yeah, so it's horrible. As we all know, we've seen it for 3 years now, almost. Um, and I know we keep hoping for another major counteroffensive success, but this has been entrenched quite literally, to the point where trench warfare, fortifications, another huge breakthrough like we saw early on in the war from the Ukrainian side. That ship kind of came and went when there wasn't enough support and enough strong push for support to Ukraine early on in the war to retake and then hold and set up major fortifications against the Russians. Now it's, yeah, now it's basically mini World War One and World War Two situation. Um, so, what's going to be the best move for? Let's go to Kursk and take a look at the incursion, the Kursk operation up here from the Ukrainian side. Okay, there we go. So there's the beginning. We can see it growing from August through September, and they continued to kind of make some gains until early September. Then we start to see the Russians push back a little, the enemy push back and start to retake some of the land that Ukraine was successfully able to hold. And we're starting to see it now to where, yeah, Ukraine is having to make decisions on what they want to do regarding Kursk, if they're going to stay, if they're going to pull back. And with the North Korean troops being introduced as a new element, whether or not that strategy is even worthwhile to continue pursuing. Um, yeah. Let's see, what else have we got? Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. It might come down to the Baltics, guys. It might come down to, if no one else is going to have the courage, it might come down to one of the smaller nations of the world that have everything to gain and everything to lose from the future of Ukraine and the future of NATO as a whole remaining stalwart and strong to break the taboo and be willing to commit to mutual defense and know that NATO will still have its back and not throw them to the wolves as punishment, or say you can't do that. That's you know that's going to be a problem. Um, and I don't want to call them out. There's people from Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. No one should ever call for another country to do something, um, without consulting with people from those countries. But from what I've seen in news reports, at least, these are the three countries other than France who have actually talked, or maybe not all of them. I think it was just Lithuania maybe, but one of the Baltics and France. Those are the countries that I think it was Lithuania. Those are the countries that have actually talked about breaking the taboo, and someone has to be the first to do it. So hopefully we'll see that happen. If you know anyone from any of the Baltics or from France, try to, I don't know, open the conversation, see their thoughts about it, gauge if there's support for that. Because I know unless the U.S. really shifts their policy, and they're planning to do so after the election, I don't see Americans being in Ukraine directly from the U.S. government. I see it being a smaller country that would first set that trend. All right, let me go ahead and close this. Oh, we had another donation. We're at 19,103.47 hryvnia. Thank you very much for your donation. It's greatly appreciated. Oh, let me go out of full screen mode, and so I can also see the chat. All right, let's see. Okay. Reporting from Ukraine says that Ukrainian thumb sticking out towards Gorenovo is on the high ground, looking down on Russians advancing toward Lyubimovka. Okay. I'll need to look at exactly where on the map both of those towns are. Feedback loop. Let's see. A feedback loop where the center crumbles as the front does to each feeding back into each other. Let's see. Instead of Russia using glide bombs to destroy entrenchments, it needs to be Ukraine tossing them to take back ground. I mean, yes, but you need to have sufficient soldiers, a sufficient attacking force to be able to take back land. Yeah. Now's the time for Ukraine to, you know, get get that number of soldiers, get the number of men that they need, number of soldiers that they need. All right. Oh, you're all good, Aussie Bugga. I sometimes have to. I've got wonky keyboards on some of my devices too. Yeah, and democracies, the number. Oh, Aussie Bugger raises a really good point. Democracies, the number of body bags coming home. I do not see it. Russia would target any foreign formations for special attention to. This is true. This is true. However, that's why it probably it needs to be something where it's a particular democracy with a strong sense of a very strong sense of anti-Kremlin, anti-Putin sentiment, a population that would support, even if it were just for a year, sending troops, basically open up the box. Because you'll have a lot of countries who will say, well, why? Why go to war with Russia? It's not our fight. Citizens who will say, it's ridiculous. Russia has existed for a while. There shouldn't be a need for war. The usual Kremlin propaganda points that disseminate throughout various different democracies around the world. Um, uh, it's just fear. There's nothing to fear but fear itself. And I think that you're right. It would be hard to rally all the democracies to send many troops. But again, it just needs to be enough to eventually see Russia weaken from within to the point where what we're seeing right now in Chechnya and Dagestan are child's play, to the point where we see another major conflict within the borders of Russia itself, without full-scale mobilization of the West fully overcoming and humiliating Russia by pushing them back entirely militarily. it's not really a realistic um, goal. It's not really something that's going to happen. It would require escalating to the point of most democracies not being comfortable with that. The point is to take a stand, a strong stand for a long enough amount of time with not just sanctions, but other economic, military, and political tactics and strategies being implemented that isolate and destabilize Russia to the point of another collapse, like like the imperial collapse or the Soviet collapse. The whole point, the let me tell you what my definition of a victory condition against Russia is. Pull the strings until the fake federation unravels. And maybe whatever comes after the current country known as Russia would be better, maybe it'd be worse, maybe you'd have a little bit of both, but unless unless there's a balkanization of some sort, there cannot be a victory. That's what it comes down to for the West, for Ukraine, for everyone. Because the only way you can defeat a country like Russia, balkanize it. The only way you can defeat a country like China, set up a situation where it maybe not a full balkanization, but where it has a major domestic civil strife, a civil war. Same thing with the United States. The US and China don't have situations that are as prone to full balkanization as Russia, but that's what you see. To defeat major powers or superpowers, you don't do it with bombs, you don't do it with nukes, you don't do it with soldiers on the ground invading house by house. You do it by destroying them from within. The right moves on the chessboard need to be, and it's not a fucking game. I don't like to refer to it as a chessboard, but the right moves need to be made. Excuse me. I'm tired. I haven't had the best sleep. The right moves need to be made in order to see Russia balkanize and destroy itself from within, the same way it happened the last two times, the same way it happened to the Qing Empire, known as the Great Humiliation for the modern People's Republic of China. The same ways, maybe some would even argue the U.S. Civil War was a big part of it was domestic issues, but there were people internationally who were backing the North and backing the Confederacy. The U.S. Civil War didn't exist in a vacuum. There were international players involved as well, as much as Americans kind of forget that in their history classes. Um, Literally every great power we can think of today has at one point or another had a civil war or a full balkanization, been carved up at some point by foreign powers, or had their civil wars, their internal conflicts egged on by foreign powers. Um, so that's my message. I guess the message out there is do your best to defend your own country from effects like those Cold War tactics to destroy your country from within, and focus on ways to reverse that strategy and use it on your enemies, such as Russia and China. This has been my TED Talk. I hope you all enjoyed it. All right. Okay, let's see if there are any other questions left. Why not Poland? Poland's political situation, like many democracies, is too precarious. Um, the quote unquote law and justice party may not be a fan of Russia, but they are a fan of winning elections and coming back into power. And um, if the current government were to push for committing troops to Ukraine and Poland being pulled into it, it would create enough propaganda points for the opposition. It would create enough points for them to really push for, the other side is irresponsible. The other side has cost you your father, your son, your family. They've started something that didn't need to happen. But basically, just like every other major power among the democracies of the EU and NATO alliance, um, Poland politically would see too much fallout, so I don't see that happening. Same thing could happen for any of the Baltics. It's just for various reasons I see them as having uh, a bigger long term, a bigger gamble on complacency and sitting on one's hands doing nothing, um, creating a bigger problem long term with Russia. Um, but I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe my I, there should be careful thought and deliberation on a topic before an action is made. Perhaps my thought on this is wrong. Perhaps committing troops from outside countries into Ukraine isn't the best approach, and instead, even if this war ended in a frozen conflict, perhaps preparations for a second war to retake and you know reunify occupied territories after a concerted effort to destabilize and balkanize Russia in the decades to come is the better approach. I just don't think so. I would prefer not to see that. It seems too unpredictable. It seems like it could become so much messier and so much more ethically complex beyond what is clearly Ukraine good, Moscovia very, very bad, very evil that we see right now, and the sentiment that people have that way in the current conflict. I could see those feelings changing if it wound up being frozen, and this has to be resolved in 20 years, in 50 years, in a second war. Um, yeah, no, it's sometimes it's now or never, sometimes it's do or die, and I fully support Ukraine. I think that the focus should be on victory conditions in this war, not in some war that'll happen tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, exactly, Anna. Ukraine doesn't have the manpower. They need committed troop deployment. Precisely. All right. Anyway, we are, oh man, an hour and a half into this stream so far. Um, let's go ahead and oh, hold on. I do want to cover a little bit more news. Let's do one more article on Ukraine, and then we're going to close out just by taking a look at a few other things that are happening around the world. Okay, interesting. Kursk update. NATO without occupied areas off table. Here we go. You know what? Here's something that likely has to do. Actually, no. There's an article here about the so-called DPRK, Donetsk People's Republic, or wait, oh wait, no, I'm sorry. Wait, that would be the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Yeah, okay. So that's North Korea. North Korea announcing the discovery of a South Korean UAV. Um, that's within. Actually, I think I'd heard about that. That one has to do with a drone. Oh, that was in North Korea's airspace, though, not in Ukraine. Um, let's go with this one from ukrinform.net. Kind of to reiterate my point about how this will become very complex and messy if it becomes frozen. Um, from ukrinform.net. And turn on the info cap. Putting it into chat. Thanks for joining UTV and Ham. Appreciate you being here. joining NATO without occupied areas is off the table. Ukraine's vice prime minister, or yeah, PM, prime minister. Ukraine will definitely be invited to NATO within the borders as of 1991, while the issue of joining the alliance, partly excluding territories temporarily occupied by Russia, is not being discussed with allies. Um, Hold on, I need to check something real fast. Yeah, and this is the hard part, because anyone who's familiar with Cyprus, for example, will know uh, why it is not a part of NATO. And Albania is part of NATO, but that's because they have relinquished any and all claim over Kosovo, which is considered its own independent country and not part of Albania. Although Serbians like to push propaganda contrary to that point. Um, Sometimes Serbian government, I should say, rather. I don't want to speak about people in sweeping generalizations. Um, So, Ukraine will definitely be invited to NATO within the borders as of 1991, while the issue of joining the alliance, partly excluding territories temporarily occupied by Russia, is not being discussed with allies. This was stated by the Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro Atlantic Integration and head of the Ministry of Justice, Olha Stefanishina, excuse me, who spoke on national television on Saturday, Ukrinform reports. The official denied reports that Ukraine had been offered to join NATO within the limits of government-controlled territories and emphasized that for the Ukrainian side, the issue is off the table. President Zelensky starts the meeting with Italy's Prime Minister. There were no such conversations. Ukraine will definitely be invited to NATO within the borders as of 1991 as a sovereign independent state. This is not being discussed. It is off the table, said Stefanishina. She noted that Ukraine's membership in NATO is possible only after the war is settled, and the situation may change in the process after the invitation to the alliance is received. The deputy prime minister explained that once the invitation is issued, a protocol on accession shall be drawn up, which specifies both the terms and reforms necessary for joining NATO. These are already technical things, issues of technical interoperability. We are talking about the routine reforms, Stefanishina said. She also emphasized that the invitation to NATO is not a political declaration, but a legal decision. But after it, Article 5 of the Washington Treaty does not automatically apply to Ukraine. Hold on. Invitation is not a political declaration, but a legal decision. But after it, Article 5 of the Washington Treaty does not automatically apply to Ukraine. As Ukrinform reported earlier, President Volodymyr Zelensky said a formal invitation to NATO was the only way to end the war unleashed by Russia. I mean, it's true, because that would be the ultimate deterrence to Russia, which has worked so far. Because if it didn't work, Russia would have already attempted to invade the Baltics. It would have already attempted to take Estonia, Latvia, or Lithuania. And now, especially with Finland and Sweden in the alliance, Russia's really gonna think twice about trying to invade any of those countries because there are now NATO soldiers, very competent, well armed NATO soldiers in Finland and Sweden, who would be there to immediately respond. The Baltics have been shored up a little bit more, so to speak. So that was something that was a major blunder for Vladimir Putin. And kind of strengthened the weakest link, so to speak, in the NATO alliance in terms of vulnerability. So Ukraine, in terms of Ukraine, what I don't see here is after Article 5 of the treaty does not automatically apply to Ukraine, it's the invitation. So the invitation is just that. They're just saying that when you're invited, you're not already in NATO, so you don't have Article 5 immediately in effect. It's not until you fully join NATO that you have Article 5 available to your country. I would be very happy if Ukraine could join the EU, but of course, that could also, during wartime, have its own set of issues. Moldova will be voting soon, very soon this month, if I'm not mistaken. regarding joining the European Union, and I hope that they vote yes on that. That would be fantastic. Okay. Ukraine being a strong NATO ally and Moldova joining the EU would all but it would create a scenario where it's much more likely that Transnistria will be settled within our lifetimes. Anyway, let's move on to another piece of news real fast. Let's see. There are multiple wars going on everywhere. Let's go with let's see. I know this might be a subject that people have various different opinions on, um, but it's incredibly important to discuss. Let's talk about. Let's talk briefly about the situation in Lebanon. Let's see. Let me take a look real fast. Now, I want to talk about Lebanon because for anyone who's old enough to remember the last war um, between Israel and Hezbollah, or wait, well, the last war that occurred between it was at no, the last war in Lebanon in general, the Lebanese Civil War, and the effect of it, the way that it played out, basically. For anyone who's unfamiliar, let me go ahead and start by pulling over this article. This one's from AP News. And yeah, yeah, we need to talk a little bit about what Hezbollah is and how it exists and the tactics it's used, who it's been trained by. This is a longer article, so I may not go through the whole thing, but I want to talk about it because what happens in Israel does have an effect on what happens in Ukraine and what happens in Lebanon, what happens in Israel, Palestine, Lebanon. Basically, that entire region does have an effect. It's all interconnected. But to give some background, the Lebanese Civil War lasted from 1975 to 1990. However, and it was a war that was, it was very, they were dark times, and religious splits had a huge part. Um, splits between Lebanese Christians, Sunni Muslims, Shia Muslims, um, and regional demographics, populations concentrated in different parts of the country. Uh, Druze populations were involved in the war as well. It was a really really big uh, religious civil war, I guess one might say. Um, Lasted for a while, but even after that war ended in 1990, religious tensions kind of have, to a certain degree, remained. And following it, you had a situation with, let's see here. Let me pull it up. what most people forget about recent history um, is that following the Civil War, which officially ended in 1990, there was still fighting that continued all the way until the early 2000s. And there was a breakaway nation, a controversial one, that was never internationally recognized, known as the uh, South Lebanon Army or South Lebanese Army. Uh, it was military group, a militia with close ties to Israel, with support from Israel. Um, Israeli forces withdrew in 2000, and the Southern Lebanese army that was looking to establish a basically what they called a state of free Lebanon, um, a Christian, basically a Christian breakaway state, Maronite Christian breakaway state in southern Lebanon. Here, this is just Wikipedia, but I'll show it real fast. Uh, this is what I'm talking about. There's a lot to go into here, so I'm not going to go into all of the history, but this will give you kind of an idea of, some of the recent history and stuff that's going on, and some topics that allows for Hezbollah to radicalize people and get them to join their organization, which is very much a terrorist organization. Um, and so it was a separatist country that did not have international recognition. You can see here on this map, a little tiny strip of land right there across the southern border, kind of like a buffer zone situation, um, that was supported by Israel for a certain amount of time. Eventually considered to pretty much be considered unviable. No surprise looking at it on a map as a nation state. Um, and there was not really support to recognize it as a nation from the US and other key Israeli allies. Eventually, it was a bigger liability than an asset to continue supporting. There were some controversies about the way that this breakaway state of, southern or state of free, Free Lebanon operated as an organization. Um, and eventually, it collapsed upon Israel withdrawing in 2000, kind of like a South Vietnam situation for Israel, where South Vietnamese, the fall of Saigon during the Vietnamese War. This was kind of Israel's Vietnam, supporting for a long time, but their ally never really could be self-sufficient and independent without heavy support from Israel. Same thing with South Vietnam and the U.S. And Hezbollah has heavily operated in parts of southern Lebanon uh, in recent years. There's a big push, like to have conspiracy theories saying that Lebanese society, there's an attempt to control or manipulate things from the Israeli side, and basically this is I mean, this is 24 years ago. It's not that recent, and it lasted for many decades, but it's still something that allows them to get militants recruited to fight against Israel. Anyway, with that kind of backstory, maybe that's just one piece of the puzzle, but that gives a little bit of an idea in recent history of tensions and recent conflict, war between Lebanon, militants in Lebanon and the IDF. So let me go back to this news article. Since the war in Gaza, you know, it's expanded basically to now there's conflict, there's war with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. It's different because it's war against Hezbollah, but at the time, the last time Israel was in this area directly that I'm aware of, it was to try to support that group, the Free State of Lebanon, the Southern Lebanese Army. Uh, Now it's to root out and remove these militants of Hezbollah who are trained by Iran, who are also have had ties, of course, to Hamas and other very anti-Israel groups, part of kind of this international this international coalition of terrorist organizations linked to Iran. Um, and a big part of their thought process is if we don't fight against Israel, they'll push to turn all of Lebanon and all the Middle East Christian and Jewish. So it's very much religious based. Tel Aviv, Israel. Well, that's a big part of it at least. Before I continue with the article, let me see what you guys are saying in the comments. Maybe someone's got some opinions. Oh, well, okay. Everyone's still it makes sense. Everyone's still on the topic of Ukraine and a little bit about Armenia. Oh, this is true. Yeah, that's another one that we've discussed on this channel before. The situation in Armenia. Anyway, Israeli forces have spent much of the past year destroying Hamas' vast underground network in Gaza. They are now focused on dismantling tunnels and other hideouts belonging to Hezbollah militants in southern Lebanon. Scarred by Hamas' deadly raid into Israel last year that sparked the war in Gaza, Israel says its aims to prevent a similar incursion across its northern border from ever getting off the ground. The Israeli military has combed through the dense brush of southern Lebanon for the past 2 weeks, uncovering what it says are Hezbollah's deep attack capabilities, highlighted by a tunnel system equipped with weapons caches and rocket launchers that Israel says pose a direct threat to nearby communities. Israeli soldiers are seen during a ground operation in southern Lebanon, near the border with Israel. October 13th, 2024. Israel's war against the Iran backed militant group stretches far inside Lebanon, and its airstrikes in recent weeks have killed more than 1,700 people, about a quarter of whom were women and children, according to local health authorities. But its ground campaign has centered on a narrow patch of land just along the border where Hezbollah has had a long standing presence. Hezbollah has deep ties to southern Lebanon. And as I mentioned, the fall of the self-declared Free State of Lebanon really saw eh, within Lebanese society, I'd say saw an end to heavy Maronite Christian or I don't know about Sunni Muslim influence in the South, but you see the rise of militant Hezbollah affiliated um, Shia political entities, including the political wings of Hezbollah, kind of in this area a bit. Primarily Hezbollah itself as a militant organization. But Hezbollah, which has called for Israel's destruction, is the Arab world's most significant paramilitary force. It began firing rockets into Israel a day after Hamas's attack. After nearly a year of tit-for-tat fighting with Hezbollah, Israel launched its ground invasion into southern Lebanon on October 1st and has since sent thousands of troops into the rugged terrain. Even as it continues to bolster its forces, Israel says its invasion consists of limited, localized, and targeted ground raids that are meant to destroy Hezbollah infrastructure so that tens of thousands of displaced Israelis can return home. The fighting also has uprooted more than 1 million Lebanese in the past month. So this will create a kind of a short-term solution, which will um, make it easier for Israel to have their displaced citizens return to their homes within the boundaries of northern Israel. But it's not going to create a long-term solution because the invasion and displacement of Lebanese residents, as we've seen in Gaza, will simply create more, uh, well, more displaced people, more people who don't really care about the politics, just know that their lives have been negatively affected or ruined because of the conflict, and you'll inevitably have some people who direct that anger at the IDF. So the problem the problem really is that ideologically, how do you defeat groups like Hamas and Hezbollah when fighting against them just creates more chaos and more anger that can be directed at you? It's a bit of a conundrum. Many residents of southern Lebanon are supporters of the group and benefit from its social outreach. Though most fled the area months ago, they widely see the heavily armed Hezbollah as their defender, especially as the U.S. backed Lebanese army does not have suitable weapons to protect them from any Israeli incursion. That broad support has allowed Hezbollah to establish a military infrastructure for itself within the villages, said Eva J. Koloriotis, a political analyst specialized in the Middle East and Islamic militant groups. The Israeli military says it has found weapons within homes and buildings in the villages. Israeli soldiers seen during a ground operation in southern Lebanon near the border with Israel. And here's the actual topic of the article. Hezbollah built a network of tunnels in multiple areas of Lebanon, with Israel's air power far outstripping Hezbollah's defenses. The militant group has turned to underground tunnels as a way to elude Israeli drones and jets. Experts say Hezbollah's tunnels are not limited to the south. It's a land of tunnels, said Tal Biri, who studies Hezbollah as director of research at the Alma Research and Education Center, a think tank with a focus on northern Israel's security. Guys, what I mentioned before about destabilizing Russia and getting it to collapse from within, um, I want you to realize that's kind of like what needs to be done at an international level in coordination among democracies. Uh, and supporting Ukraine in a much stronger way is a big part of that. But it's this right here. Hezbollah is basically it's guerrilla warfare. When they're able to, they'll try to create more of a, you know, formal infrastructure, but at their heart, they're always designed to be a mobile guerrilla warfare force, like the Taliban, like Hamas, like when they first were established as an organization, the Islamic Revolution, the Revolutionary Guard in Iran, when they were first fighting against mil- uh, the military, the Iranian military, back when it was still a monarchy, before the Islamic Revolution. Um, so they get training from Iran. They conduct their own training. They create their own cells. Their whole focus isn't so much on overwhelming enemies with firepower as it is causing chaos, stirring up, you know, taking lives, you know, causing fear and terror, stirring things up, and then disappearing into the populace, disappearing into the ether, so to speak, and then re-emerging again, hit and run, and eventually create a situation where your group can never be defeated because you're decentralized and almost impossible to wipe out ideologically with the approaches that are being used by your enemies. But at the same time, um, yeah, you can create international backlash, or you can create political destabilization in an opponent nation. Um, that's what makes it so hard. That's why groups like Hezbollah can exist for decades, or can come into existence when other groups fade away and pick up the mantle, so to speak. Um, it's you can't bomb an idea, and that's the problem. There's not been enough of a campaign or a means of pushing for these radical ideas to become less popular, and for uh, ideas of secularism or other yeah, basically other forms of governance, other political um, forms of organization in Lebanon that would be more amenable with like Israel or the U.S. Uh, it's a land of tunnels, said Talbiri, who studies Hezbollah as director of research at the Alma Research and Education Center, a think tank with focus on northern Israel's security. Koloriotis said tunnels stretch under the southern suburbs of Beirut, where Hezbollah's command and control are located and where it keeps a stockpile of strategic missiles. She said the group also maintains tunnels along the border with Syria, which it uses to smuggle weapons and other supplies from Iran into Lebanon. Southern Lebanon is where Hezbollah maintains tunnels to store missiles and from where it can launch them. Kolorota said some of the more than 50 Israelis killed by Hezbollah over the past year were hit by anti-tank missiles. It's not just in the south. It's in the east. It's in the west along the coast. It's up under Beirut. They're infiltrated across all of Lebanon, and that's the problem. Um, there's pushback within Lebanese society, but Hezbollah is slowly gaining more influence, and they know how to gain that influence because they're familiar with the culture and they're familiar with people's emotions and radicalization tactics. I could keep going, but this is a longer article, and I kind of want to move on real fast, so we're not just fully focused on Israel and Lebanon. But I wanted to bring this up because um, this isn't something. Here we go. This was the last time. It wasn't just 2000. It was 2006 during the last Israel Hezbollah war. Yes, but it hasn't been expanded since 2006. So 2000, you see the fall of the Maronite Christian, Free State of Lebanon organization that was controversial, only supported by Israel. Then from 2000 through 2006, you see Hezbollah gain a foothold in what used to be the Christian Maronite Free State of Lebanon territory in the south and beyond. And then you see in 2006 things get bad enough that it leads to a war between Israel and Hezbollah, where Hezbollah was negatively affected logistics wise, but they weren't defeated. Less than 20 years later, we're seeing this happening again now. All that to say, I don't expect this war to lead to an end to hostilities either. I really don't. Unless Lebanese society finds a way to restructure and uproot the popularity of groups like Hezbollah among the population, both Sunni and Shia, but especially Shia because of the links with Iran. Just in general, really across Lebanese society, I expect we'll see this happen again, and this will last for a while. Don't expect the wars involving Israel to end anytime soon. They'll probably continue to happen alongside the war in Ukraine for a while longer. And guys, when I say a while longer, remember that I said 1975 to 1990 for the Civil War, and this kept going until 2000. This is nothing. The war in Ukraine could easily go for 10 years or longer. That war lasted for 15 years, 25, listen to me, 25 years if you include the fight that didn't end for this group, the Free State of Lebanon, back then. 25 years of fighting. So, anyone who's here who is a long term supporter of Ukraine, I want you to hear that number because I don't think it'll be quite that long, but we could see this war go on for as long as a decade or more. I hope that's not the case. I really hope it's not, but depending on how things evolve and how things turn out, we'll see. We will see. I hope I'm not being too pessimistic for people in this in this in this stream, um, but I just want people to be aware of that reality and the fact that this war can be won by Ukraine, and I don't think it's going to go on for 25 years, but it's not outside the realm of possibility that it could be longer than people would have initially predicted. So if you're here to support Ukraine, make sure it's for the long haul because, yeah, that is the reality of war, even in the modern world. All right. Anyway, moving on from that, let's see. We're going to cover one more thing, and then we're going to continue onward, or I guess we'll finish up the stream here in a sec. Let's see. Something with a, I guess kind of a, let's see. Well, it's still war related, so it's not exactly positive, but quick update regarding, let's see. Where's a good one? Oh, and also, did I put that? I think I put that link into the description, but in case I didn't, I guess I'll do that right quick. In case I didn't, there's the article about Israel and Lebanon. Um, all right. Let's see. Oh, hold on a second. Let me turn this off for a sec. Let's see. How far into this are we? We are currently. We're a little over 2 hours into this stream. Actually, all right, I'll just give a quick update rather than going through the whole article. Things in Myanmar, because I've mentioned that as well, war as well. Still more or less where they've been. That war is continuing onward, and consulate of China was hit in Myanmar. With the one that corresponds with the current junta government. Um, so yeah, I guess we'll see if that pulls China into that conflict at all, or what their reaction to that will be. Um, and the military government is trying to call for peace talks, likely because they can see that their writing on the wall is they're not going to have an overwhelming military victory, and in fact, things are looking pretty bad for the military government. Um, as the war continues over there, if the rebels do manage to overthrow the current government, then my expectation would be there'd be continued fighting because the rebel groups don't all get along. I think it would descend into war between all the factions that are currently united against the military government. I hope that I'm wrong, but that is what Burmese Myanmar history kind of has shown us in the past. And then finally, for anyone who's unaware, because it hasn't been discussed very much, the war in Ethiopia is still ongoing. Many people aren't very aware of that, and so I like to bring attention to things like this. Myanmar, because of the tyranny of the junta there. Ethiopia. Ethiopia is an interesting situation because the Ethiopian government has plenty of problems and isn't always really all that democratic. Um, it's in ways, it's in many ways better than neighboring Eritrea, which is highly authoritarian and very much a dictatorship in the same vein as North Korea. It's even got the nickname the North Korea of Africa. But really, Ethiopia has a lot of problems of its own. Their war currently is internal in Tigray and Amhara, and there's been talk about whether or not the government will be able to hold things together, whether or not we'll actually see a split, kind of like when Sudan and South Sudan split into two countries back in 2011, I want to say, sometime in the 2010s. Um, but yeah, only time will tell. So, if you weren't aware that there's a war in Ethiopia, that one is a bit less connected to Ukraine compared to Israel, less connected to the war, or, connected to China, like the war in Myanmar, but still something worth keeping your eyes on, being aware of the fact that it's ongoing, especially because of the placement of Ethiopia and its importance to global shipping with nearby uh, channels, seaports near Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, that whole area in Eastern Africa. All right, I think that's good. Then we've kind of covered some international news as well. Um, so for now, I've got to go ahead and run to take care of this other matter. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you for showing support for Ukraine. I hope that you received some useful information from this stream, and I hope to see you all again sometime soon. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Oh, actually, hold on. Let me check and see if there were any. I don't think so, but let me see if there are any questions I missed. Nope, I didn't. Questions are all good. And I don't see any in the live chat, I don't believe. Yeah, in Ethiopia it is nasty, Aussie bugger. It's an ethnic conflict. It's yeah, it's difficult. Um and regarding the conversation earlier about Armenia and Azerbaijan and Turkey, that's also very important because the situation in Israel uh and the wars Israel is involved with are highly influenced by Iran. So Iran's presence in the region is a big part of what stokes those conflicts. Not the only reason, but a big part. And um, yeah, how things play out between Armenia and Azerbaijan will have a big determination on whether or not things uh, go well or end poorly for Iran in their own regional conflicts. So Israel, Lebanon, uh, Palestine, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. If you want to know all of the countries that indirectly have their own conflicts that affect uh, both Russia and the war in Ukraine, as well as Iran and its continued existence and stability, those are the places you should be looking at, in my opinion. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining and have a great day. Slava Ukraini.